Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Donkey Projections. I'm Eric, and we have Lucas as always.
Hey everyone.
Today is July 5th, 2021, and I hope all of you had a very nice 4th of July and a very festive one. And today we are going to be talking about the 2022 US Senate race in Pennsylvania. We're going to give you guys a brief background of the race, the potential candidates and the potential, close primaries, and then we're going to be talking about who really has a chance of winning this race, and then we're going to talk about the importance of the flip of Pennsylvania, in which way it will go, because this is a pretty critical race, and we will show you a map of it later in the video.
And we'll also be discussing what a Democrat needs to do in order to flip this seat and talk about if that's really possible. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So let's discuss who is in this race so far. The current senator for the state is Pat Toomey. I wouldn't say he's a moderate Republican, but he's less of a Trumper. He voted for impeaching or convicting former President Trump. He is retiring, which makes this seat completely up for grabs. A quick background: in 2016, he lost against Katie McGinty, which actually was an upset. Katie McGinty was expected to win, and Pat Toomey also won in 2010. So he's a two-term senator. So currently, it seems that Republican support is going around Sean Parnell, who's a very strong Trump supporter. Ran for House in 2020 against Connor Lamb. He ended up losing by around 2 to 3 points. And right now, he really did get a lot of support right now by key Republicans such as Guy Reschenthaler and Mike Kelly. These were two representatives that we were discussing that might enter this race. And interestingly enough, they endorsed someone who hasn't even held political office before with Sean Parnell. And of course, Donald Trump Jr. also endorsed Sean Parnell. So Sean Parnell does look to be the front runner right now. However, the other big name we are waiting on is Ryan Costello, who is a former representative. If he hops in the race, we'll be discussing how that might change things, but he has not done that so far. And I'll hand it over to Eric now for the Democratic primary.
So on the Democratic end, there are also two pretty main candidates that are probably going to be, the most important ones to take a look at. So the first one is John Fetterman, and he is the Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, which the role he took was pretty recent. And he's actually more of a progressive, and you may think that, a progressive Pennsylvania is not necessarily the best move for the Democratic Party here because Pennsylvania is a pretty moderate place, especially out in the west and in the central part of Pennsylvania. But he's kind of portrayed himself as more of a populist kind of candidate, and he's going to try to, appeal to the common voter and try to, unify, both sides of the Democratic Party. And his main goal is to kind of win back Democratic voters in Pennsylvania who voted for Donald Trump in the 2020 election. So that's going to be a big part of his campaign, and that's also how he's going to try to win back the primary. And if he wins the primary, that's also what he's going to do to win the election. The next potential candidate that we have is Connor Lamb. And Lucas kind of mentioned him when he was talking about Sean Parnell. They kind of had a race off together, and Connor Lamb did narrowly win. He's kind of like a more moderate Democrat. He used to serve in the military, and he is another. I don't think he's officially marked his bid in the Senate, but he's very greatly considering it, and he would be a pretty important contender against John Fetterman. So we will see how they will fight off together.
So let's take a look at some of the polling data we have from this primary so far. The only polls we did get were internal, so I'm not really trusting them too much, but they show Fetterman crushing Connor Lamb, which is interesting. I guess we gotta wait and see what actually happens because this is an internal. We'll wait for more polls. But in particular, what would a Democrat need to win in Pennsylvania? What they need is to swing the suburbs, the Philly suburbs. In the 2020 election, this is the 2020 map actually. Even though Joe Biden lost around 4 points in Philadelphia County, he made that ground up greatly in the suburbs the Philly suburbs, such as these counties here: Northampton, I believe he flipped that one, Lee County, Montgomery. These suburb counties all surrounding Philadelphia. If John Fetterman or Connor Lamb can do that, they'll probably do very well in the general election. The other thing that John Fetterman has been talking about a lot, as Eric mentioned, are those voters in Western Pennsylvania. And I've talked to others about this as well. It seems that John Fetterman will do very well in Western Pennsylvania. He is from Western Pennsylvania. He was the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, which is, I forgot which county it is, but it's in Western Pennsylvania. And the thought is that he will be able to outperform a lot of numbers there compared to past Democratic candidates. Perhaps he can also flip back Erie and get those numbers back. But as Eric mentioned, it was appealing to the common person. His populist message would be able to win back the state from Pat Toomey. So the chances of this happening, I think, are pretty likely, actually. And we do have this race right now as lean D, I believe, because John Fetterman is a pretty good candidate. And, one other thing to mention, I'll go back to the map now, is that Sean Parnell running a very pro-Trump campaign, that might not really work that well for him, considering how quickly the suburbs have raced away from President Trump, which is exactly why Joe Biden ended up winning, because all the suburbs, not just in Pennsylvania, but in Georgia, but in Wisconsin, in Michigan, they were all able to go back to him. And Trump wasn't the start of this, but he definitely accelerated the suburbs moving to the left. So if this trend does continue, Sean Parnell will probably not do that well against John Fetterman. But again, we're early in the race right now. We don't have much polling data, although we don't trust it that much so far. But we have this one as lean D. And, I'll give it over to Eric now to discuss why this is so important.
Yeah, so let's kind of develop a hypothetical here. So Lucas kind of he assumed that Ron Johnson would continue to serve in the Senate and not retire, which itself is not completely certain. But for this case, let's assume that Ron Johnson does stay, and if he does, he will likely win the state. And also, we still don't know yet, making a lot of assumptions still because we're still a bit early, but also let's assume that Chris Sununu does decide to run for the Senate, and here he has a pretty good chance of winning because of his popularity in the state of New Hampshire. So that really puts Pennsylvania in this critical spot, because if Pennsylvania goes to the Republicans have an outright majority of 51 to 49, and for Biden, as a Democratic president, it's not really going to be good for him because he won't really be able to push out legislation. He's already having trouble pushing stuff out, and he has to now negotiate. So with an outright majority against him, it's still not going to be very good for him. But if Pennsylvania goes to the Democratic side with all the other givens, with Wisconsin and New Hampshire still going to the Republicans, Biden will still be able to kind of try to negotiate with a 50-50 Senate, which is way easier than having an outright majority against him.
Right, and I do want to also add quickly that Wisconsin, we haven't decided on this yet. It's still a toss-up. Technically, Arizona, Georgia are also toss-ups as well, but we just made, and North Carolina too, we just made a quick assumption right now to show how really important this race is. But we do believe that the most likely seat to flip is Pennsylvania. Of any state, of any red or blue state, that it is Pennsylvania for the factors that we mentioned previously. And that does mark the end of the video for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please like when you like our content. Please subscribe. And we'll see you in our next episode tomorrow.
See ya.